The legislature is back in session. Senator Lahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move that Bill number 219-34 be placed in the third reading. And I'd like to speak on the bill, if I may proceed. This bill is a bill that would add, it's for the purposes of assisting the Guam Veterans Affairs Office in filling its Veterans Registry. And so what this bill would do would ask that the mayors, who are already by law mandated to conduct an annual outreach in their village to conduct a census, that one of the questions that they would ask in the households is, are there any veterans here? And the goal is, of course, if they're not in the Veterans Affairs Registry already, is to get them listed there so that Guam overall will be able to account for its veterans and when we were advocating for additional services here for the veterans. And the second benefit would be that those individual veterans who may be able to benefit from some of the services that the Guam Veterans Affairs Office can assist them with, that the Veterans Affairs Office would be able to reach them. So what the bill would do is say that as a matter of, I've added it to, there's an existing duty in 40112 that says that mayors shall conduct an annual census and maintain a current listing of names of all residents in his jurisdiction. So what I would do is add that as a part of that, they would solicit from these families if there are any veterans in the household, and submit a report to the Veterans Affairs Office as to the names and total numbers of veterans residing in their jurisdiction. And it, of course, would be up to the Guam Veterans Office to proceed from there to make its own outreach and to, if it needs further verification. The other section of the bill says that when the mayor solicits, and I've got when the mayor solicits, he will also solicit the DD 214 forms or other verification of veteran status, and if he receives any from these veterans, that he would transmit those to the Guam Veterans Affairs Office. That's what the Veterans Affairs Office is using to confirm eligibility of these veterans for different types of services. But I would like to amend this bill because there have been similar bills that I've introduced and thankfully passed, thanks to all my colleagues, that we were able to, I think, clarify just some of the technicalities going forward. So if I could, Madam Speaker, I would like to, my first amendment is to page 1 of the bill, lines 7 to 8. So you should have a pack of 3 amendments in front of you. So this is the first one. This is just to the findings and intent. And this change is exactly the same as a change we made into a prior bill, so I'm just mirroring that here. Takes out the words directly influences and says instead, can help make the case to increase the level of services and benefits for the veterans. So that's my first amendment, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker Talahi. On the First Amendment on lines 7 through 8, page 1 of the bill, to replace directly influences to add in can help make the case to increase the level of services and benefits afforded to Guam veterans by the U.S. federal government. Anyone like to speak on the amendment? Any objections to the amendment? No objection. Amendment passes. Speaker Talahi, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So on page 2 of the bill, this bill had originally required the mayors to do an additional, in addition to their annual census, to do an additional semi-annual outreach. I was hoping at the time that the mayors would just include this as part of their, some mayors have festivals, like the Donit Festival or whatever, and that they would, as part of their ongoing activities, include this outreach. But I'm going to make my proposal is to amend the bill by removing that requirement for an additional outreach. I went to Veterans Affairs activity recently where they tried to get community stakeholders to discuss these options, and I think we're now looking at additional volunteers that are going to be helping Veterans Affairs Office in this outreach. I think the mayors currently already assist in this outreach very much, and that so we're just going to leave it with the annual census and leave all the other additional outreach to either voluntary or led by Veterans Affairs Office. So I was removing that line in lines 4. Sorry, I'm not sure what line that is, but if you can see it on the amendment, the struck through provision, and adding the 2 words.
On Speaker Talahi's amendment on page 2, lines 4 through 10 of the bill, in furtherance of the current efforts of the Office of Veteran Affairs and other agencies, is the intent of E. Legislator Nguahan to authorize village mayors to include the solicitation of veteran data. We will cross out in and include the word during their annual census, and offer the option of listing veteran status on a constituents verification of residency form. And at this point, we line out and conduct semi-annual community outreach to the veteran population of his or her jurisdiction for the purpose of assisting the Guam Veteran Affairs Office with updating the Guam Veterans Registry and to connecting the veteran population to available services. Would anyone like to speak on the Talahi amendment? Any objections to the Talahi amendment? No objection. Amendment passes.
Thank
Speaker
you very much,
Talahi, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker and colleagues. And finally, the last amendment is pretty much the technical portions. And so part of this is just to mirror some of the other previous bills. And so to begin with, it would, when it says that as part of the annual census that mayors conduct as to who are residents in their village, that this is, we know that with the new ID, people are going to be required to bring in a verification of residency from their mayors. So I thought that this would be the perfect opportunity to, when they come in for verification of residency, to again solicit from them whether they're veterans and whether we would be able, hopefully, ultimately to provide them with additional services. So at the time when they are asking for a verification of residency, this allows the mayors to ask them that additional question. Are you a veteran or not? And it says here, I'm adding the line, constituents may provide a copy of their DD-214 form or other proof of veteran status as a qualifying document. With the documented consent of the party of interest, mayors shall transmit that to the Office of Veterans Affairs. So it adds that consent that we had added in previous bills to, to the consent to forwarding their documents to the Veterans Affairs Office. I'm also adding a provision here where if they're not able to provide a DD-214, now we've learned that there are veterans who just don't have these documents available to them, and that might be one of the issues that they are facing, that I would like the mayors to try to get their names and send that to the Office of Veterans Affairs so that the Office of Veterans Affairs can assist them in getting those documents if that's the goal, or just so that they know. And so I just don't want that to be the impediment as to why they're not able to obtain the services that they're entitled to. So I'm adding the line, if constituent is unable to provide a DD-214 form or other proof of veteran status, mayors shall indicate on constituent's verification form that veteran status and qualifying documents were not provided. With the documented consent of the party of interest, mayors shall transmit a copy of the mayor's verification to the Office of Veterans Affairs. And in that way, the Veterans Affairs Office will get their names and their contact information so that they can contact them and see if they can help them if it's necessary. Finally, I add the words, over a secured network as prescribed by the Office of Technology. And this was an amendment made by one of my colleagues to a previous bill, which I think is a good amendment. So I'm adding that the Office of Technology is currently assisting the Office of Veterans Affairs in a great way to get these registries to be online for the first time. and to go back and get all of those supposedly 24,000 physical forms of DD-214s of people over the years into their system so that we can verify, all the changing numbers that we've been provided. So hopefully they will be able to verify after they input all that information, which ones of those are still alive, things like that, and whether their contact information is still good. And finally, I'm proposing to remove subsection U, which is that semi-annual, just another one of the semi-annual outreach language, so I'm deleting subsection U. I would just ask that this all be considered as one, unless anyone has an objection. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is there any objection to consider this amendment as one full amendment, whereas we are amending page 2 and 3 of the bill, lines 22 to 26, and lines 1 through 16? Is there anyone that would like to speak on the amendment? Any objection to the amendment, to the Talahi amendment? No. If so, amendment passes. Speaker Talahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that's all I have to say on this bill, so I just thank my colleagues for their support to this matter.
In regards to Bill number 219-34, as amended, would anyone like to speak on the bill? Senator Lee, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of Bill 219-34, and I thank the author and the co-sponsor for this measure. I did want to speak a little bit about one of the things that I did when we first joined the body. In the first few weeks of the term, I participated in the homeless point-in-time count, along with the Guam Homeless Coalition and a number of other community stakeholders. And at that time, and in addition to our most recent kind of homeless census, there were about 852 homeless individuals here on Guam. We were shocked to find out that many of those homeless individuals were women and children. But in addition to that, 24 of those homeless individuals were veterans. And some people might hear that number and not really think much of it, but I believe, and I know that my colleagues will likely support this, no one who has ever fought for our country should be living on the streets or staying in substandard housing or have any kind of issues with access to medical care or receiving second-class health treatment. It's unjust. And so I'm really rising in support of this bill. I think even that statistic alone, the fact that we have 24 individuals that were counted, it clearly demonstrates that we as a community and as a legislature, we're not doing enough to really get our veterans this consistent quality care and really helping to raise our voice to make sure that the federal government assists the local government in taking care of this population of individuals on our island. And if you add this to the numbers of stories from our vets that are consistently expressing frustration with either slow action or no action to many of these long-standing issues, whether it's an older member suffering from Agent Orange exposure or one of our newly returning veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress, all of our servicemen and women who've served, it's important that we, in turn, show them that level of service as well. I have many veterans in my family who have served, and even family members of veterans who end up being caregivers for these individuals. It's really important to be able to connect with them and really try to get to the root of these issues. And we're not able to do that if we don't have a very robust registry that truly represents all of the individuals in our community that require these services. And so, you know, we've listened to many stakeholders and many members of our community who come forward regarding all veterans issues. And it really comes down to this fundamental problem. We need to ensure that we receive the level of funding, services, the level of support and benefits necessary for our veterans. And we need an established number of veterans on our island for this registry. And so again, Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this amendment. I certainly want to take this opportunity to thank our mayors, thank the Office of Veterans Affairs, and the author and sponsor of this of Bill 219-34. I think this really helps us to accomplish our goal. I mean, even just this very simple but important step to ensuring that veterans in our community are recognized for their service. Sitos Masi.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Anyone else like to speak on Bill number 219-34 as amended? Anyone else? Okay. Speaker Talahi, you're welcome to close.
I would just like to thank all my colleagues who've contributed to this bill, to the co-sponsor, Senator Rodriguez, and to the colleagues who contributed to the revisions on prior bills that have helped to make this bill effective, and of course for all your support of the veterans. Sitos Masi.
Thank you. We'll have a quick recess. Is there any objection to place Bill number 219-34 into the voting file? No objection? Bill number 219-34 is now in the voting file.
Is there a motion on Bill 267? The sponsor, thank you, Senator Espaldon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm the one who moved this on to the agenda on behalf of Senator Torres, and since she's not here, if we could just set this aside until later on in the session. Thank you.
All right, any objection to setting it aside? No objection, motion carries. Bill number, is it 279? No, 272. Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill number 272-34 is an act to add a new subsection E to subsection 6303 of Article 3, Chapter 6, Title 4, Guam Code, annotated relative to requiring reporting of amended government position and deferring the filing of amended positions. Madam Speaker, the heart of this bill is on Section 4, page 3, Section 4, line 17, and it reads, if a position's qualifications are amended and the position must be filled prior to the 180-day period, the last approved position qualification shall be used for selection. No penalty shall be applied to any applicant who does not meet requirements from an amended position description that did not complete the 180-day period. Madam Speaker, what this bill intends to do is close a gap in the job description and job requirements within our government agencies. During the time of certain promotions within our public safety agencies, we had a lot of some concerns from our public safety officers that they were not aware of changes within the job requirements for specific job descriptions. Thereby, they felt that they were, that somehow the job requirement was outfitted for specific individuals and not allowing ample time for other individuals to meet the requirements of the job. Within this bill, we are looking to add the 180-day requirement to assist those who, if this requirement in the job position description does change, that it allows them to avail to programs and also courses to meet the certification requirements. Some of the agencies, some of the officers felt that they were left behind. And so in an instance, we looked at the current law, and we are now putting a requirement for if this job description and job requirement should change in the middle of the application process, it will allow those to the opportunity to meet those requirements within a 180-day period. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. On Bill 272, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Bill 272, if not, then Senator Steves, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The good author of the legislation would please yield to a question. My question is just regarding the input provided by autonomous agencies. As we do know, a lot of these autonomous agencies have bond provisions, and I just want to ensure that us as the legislature potentially having an effect on the governing body and their ability to ensure that positions are met or able to be filled with the most qualified individuals for their needs as an autonomous agency. Could it potentially have an effect on some of the bond provisions? And are we injecting ourselves into the authority that was granted onto them as a governing board of the, so again, specifically to the autonomous agencies such as GPA, GWA, the port?
Would you yield to that, Senator Nelson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. The autonomous agencies, basically the format of this bill is a similar requirement for when any agency would like to place forward a job description or job classification. And so really what it is we're addressing that if you are going to change the job requirement certification within the middle of the application process, it is also going to be, should this bill pass into law, a requirement to allow others to avail to the certain requirements that have changed. So it should not impact the bond that the autonomous agencies had. Rather, it's just looking for a fair process for those individuals that are applying for the job. And if the job requirement changes in the middle of the application process, and those individuals that did apply for the job do not have those requirements halfway through, they're allotted extra time to acquire those certifications or requirements in place for them.
Senator Steves, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the author for the input. I just wanted to, again, highlight that point. I thank her for the response, and I'm satisfied. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? If not, Senator Nelson, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues. I ask for their support on this bill. It is a very straightforward bill with a requirement that I feel that gives each individual the opportunity to apply for jobs based on merits, not on political hiring, political affiliations to certain individuals, or of political interest. Like I said, we've seen within this term some of the challenges and perhaps some of the lives that have been impacted when a job announcement is changed midway through, and those that applied prior do not meet the certification requirements, and thereby they are left behind in the promotion process. And so I want to thank my colleagues for their support. I humbly ask for their support on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the motion to place Bill 272-34 into third reading file, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Atta, you are recognized on Bill 279.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to place Bill 279-34 COR into the third reading, and I'd like to discuss it.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Bill 279 is relative to the General Services Agency, GSA, and the Chief Procurement Officer. And basically what we have for many, many years is that the GSA was established and it's headed by a Chief Procurement Officer, and pretty much really is kind of operates in a vacuum, except that, you know, line agencies, when they have procurement requirements, it gets sent down through GSA, and GSA then brings those solicitation or the procurement requirements to finality. But other than that, really the GSA is pretty much on their own. What the bill does is it proposes to place the Chief Procurement Officer to be under the to be accountable to the Director of Administration for management and administration of the office of GSA. Now, the way the bill is written in Section 2 is that the Chief Procurement Officer is uniquely responsible for the supervision and procurement of supplies and services. And basically, the execution of her responsibilities is guided by what's provided in the Act. But really, it's not answerable to anybody else. And this whole situation was brought up by the Office of the Public Accountability when basically noted that several audits had been conducted, and, you know, really the GSA, the Chief Procurement Officer at GSA, really seemed to be, okay, thank you, and move on. Bill 279 further goes and establishes more clearly what are the qualification requirements of the Chief Procurement Officer. And all it does is it basically, you know, articulates that the qualifications would include theoretical and practical knowledge and all that. Then in Section 4, we talk about the tenure and removal, in that the Department of Administration administrator or director actually could terminate the Chief Procurement Officer for cause, and then through the process provided in personnel law. Now, I should note that during the public hearing, we received testimony from the Director of the Department of Administration who supports the bill. We also received testimony from the Office of the Public Auditor who supports the bill. And of course, Attorney John Thomas Brown testified. But missing from the public hearing was the Chief Procurement Officer from the GSA. But it's interesting to note that I guess yesterday, a request, or last week, a request was sent to the Chief Procurement Officer asking for comments on Bill 279. And it was interesting to note that, you know, the Chief Procurement Officer outlined all the objections that the office had to the bill and the concerns that they had. And I wish that those had been articulated at the public hearing. Notwithstanding, I went ahead and I read through the comments that she had provided. And I would agree in one respect, that maybe on page 3 of the bill, on line 3, that really And this is on the section regarding tenure and removal. The way the bill is written right now, as shown on page 3, line 3, is that the Office of the Public Auditor is somehow plays a role in evaluating how well how well the Chief Procurement Officer has accomplished her procurement responsibilities, and I would just, I'll make the motion later to delete that part, such that really the line of responsibility should be the Chief Procurement Officer to the Director of Administration. And if the Director of Administration determines that the Chief Procurement Officer is not carrying out her management responsibilities as evidenced by audit findings from the public auditor or from other sources of information, then the Director of Administration should be the one to take those matters into his hands and deal with it. But I'll make that amendment after everyone has had a chance to comment on the bill. Thank you.
On the bill, would any senator like to be recognized? Senator Borja Muñoz, you are recognized.
Just a quick question, Madam Speaker, for the author, if he would so yield.
Please state your question, yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On page 2, line 10 and 22, the terms General Service Administration was used, and I don't know if there was a specific reason for using General Service Administration, or maybe it was a technical oversight. Just wanted to ask the author.
Senator Ada, would you yield? Would you yield, Senator?
So if I understand the question, is General Services Administration the same as GSA?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It is. Okay. So is there a reason why? I'm just concerned if there was a reason why administration was used rather than the term General Services Agency.
Because I guess we've all always known of it as, GSA. Well, okay, I see your point. As opposed to General Services Administration, it probably should read General Services Agency.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. If she wants to make the motion to make that correction.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Muñoz, you have the floor.
So just to make that amendment then to lines 10, where it says General Services Administration, it would now read General Services Agency. And if that could be I'm not sure of a separate amendment, also on lines 22, where it says Services Administration, we change administration to agency.
On the amendment, is there any objection? No objection, amendment carries. Senator Muñoz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No further.
Thank you very much. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Ada, you may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to make an amendment on page 3, line 3, and that is to delete on line 3 beginning with the word the procurement responsibilities up to on line 4 where it reads the public auditor or. So that then the way it reads is that this is in relation to tenure and removal, and would then read, shall be a full-time classified, the chief procurement officer shall be a full-time classified employee and may be removed from office in accordance with procedures and causes of personnel law for GCA and for any cause specified in this act. Recurrent failure to materially comply with management responsibilities as determined by the Director of Administration shall be cause for termination or other action. So basically, by deleting then reference to the public auditor's determination or assessment or evaluation of the chief procurement officer's performance, by removing that, then really the line of authority is from the chief procurement officer answerable to the Department of Administration director, and not by some outside, but by some entity outside of the department.
On the amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the amendment?
Well, then, talk about it.
On the amendment, Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a question for the proffer of the amendment, just so I can understand. We are going to remove the, the public auditor input, whether or not the chief procurement officer should be terminated if, in fact, they somehow made a huge mistake in the procurement deal. So we're removing the public auditor's role. Is that correct?
Senator Atta, would you yield to that question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. First of all, I'm removing that because the public auditor's function is to basically review the performance of the various departments to make sure that they're in compliance with laws and whatnot. And any findings of fault really should be given to the head of that organization. And, otherwise we'll be including this, this sort of language in other departments that now the public auditor can go in and do an audit of DPW, and based on her findings, that could be cause for termination. I mean, if that's the case, I don't think that makes for good organizational operations. So I think that the findings should be given to the Director, Department of Administration, who is a duly confirmed person by the legislature, and make him be responsible for taking the appropriate action.
Senator Nelson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I just have a quick recess, Madam Speaker?
We'll take a 2-minute recess. Thank you. We're back in session. There's a copy of a letter from the Chief Procurement Officer at GSA they're making copies of, and it will be circulated. Is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on Bill 279? Okay, I'm sorry. We're on Senator Atta's amendment to remove the words on line 3 on page 3, words on line 3 and 4, from the word "the" all the way to public auditor, comma. Is there any objection to that motion? Senator Nelson, on the motion? Objection. All right. So all in favor of this amendment, Senator Atta's amendment, please raise your hand. Yes, I'll repeat the amendment. So Senator Atta's amendment is on page 3, line 3. We're going to delete the words, "the procurement responsibilities of the Chief Procurement Officer as determined by the public auditor, comma." The amendment is to delete those words. And there's been an objection, so we're going to vote on that amendment right now. All right, so all in favor of the Atta amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment passes. Senator Atta, on the bill, you were closing. You still have the floor. All right. On the motion to place Bill 279 as amended, is there any, to place it on the third reading, is there any objection? We've already spoken on the bill. Would you like to speak on the bill, Senator? He's already closed on the bill. Would you like to speak on the bill? All right, so on the bill, on the motion to place Bill 279-34 on the third reading, there being no objection, motion carries. Is there a motion on Bill 292? Or is it 297? Which one are we on now? On Bill 292, is there a motion? Senator St. Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I spoke to the author of the bill, and he's got 5 minutes. He's almost here.
All right, so is there any objection to just passing this on file? No objection. This bill will be passed on file. Will now be Bill 297. Senator Atta, you are recognized. Pardon, 297. We're on Bill 297. Senator Atta, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 297-34 COR on the third reading file, and I'd like to discuss it, please.
Please proceed.
Thank you. What's being passed around right now is an aerial graphic of the location that we are talking about. But basically, what Bill 297 does is it authorizes the sale of a 316 plus or minus square meter portion of the old De La Corte Street in Old Agana. And this piece of property is contiguous to lots 1058, new lots 1060, lots 1041-1 new, and 1047. So if you take a look at the map, just to give you an orientation, It shows there in red the area that we are talking about, and the old De La Corte Street. It's a street that is no longer has any public use right now. However, the surrounding landowners have requested to buy the property. On the second sheet of the handout number 2, it shows you who are the owners of the the surrounding properties, and they are all belongs basically to EC Development and to the Calvo family. Now, we took this up in the last session, but then sent it back to the committee because it was missing the second appraisal. So since then, the second appraisal has come back, and one appraisal came back at $76,000. The other appraisal came back at $90,600. And so the law requires that when you have, it requires 2 appraisals, and then you take the average of the 2. And so the average appraised value of this property is $83,300. The adjacent landowners have signed off on this proposed purchase, indicating that they have no interest in purchasing De La Corte Street. Now, the question was raised last time we were discussing this as to whether the purchase of the property, does it affect the beach access? And it does not. Beach access in this area is on the east side of this particular property here, and also through the Padre Palomo Park. So now the question is the way the bill reads is that, so we authorized the sale of the easement in section 2 there. We give that authorization. And then on section 3, it talks about, so what do we do with the proceeds of the sale? And so the proceeds then, it reads on section 3, funds generated from the sale shall be deposited into the Chamorro Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund, and that's what it would be used for, to survey Chamorro Land Trust properties so that we can put out leases on these properties and hopefully have funds available also to put in infrastructure. In addition to that, the Section 5 of the bill requires that that upon recordation, that then this real property will be added to the tax roll and would then result in generating additional tax revenues for the government. So I think that the bill provides a win-win situation for the Chamorro Land Trust, providing them with funds that are needed. It adds to the tax rolls, and now it allows the property owners there to consolidate their property and develop it for whatever commercial venture they may want to get into. So I ask my colleagues to support the passage of Bill 297. Thank you.
On Bill 297, is there any senator who would like to be recognized? Senator Nelson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to point out the site analysis done by Cornerstone Valuation of Guam. And I'd like to thank the sponsor of the bill for providing 2 appraisal values in accordance with the law, and thank him for his patience. But this This cornerstone valuation of Guam has fee simple land value analysis on it. And my understanding is this is the surrounding areas per value. And so really in question is the appraisal value. Perhaps I'm just not seeing things right, or I'm not understanding the entirety of land cost on Guam. And this is government land, and this is land that the people own, that we are looking to give the Calvo Corporation a piece of government-owned property for the value of what is estimated around $80,000 if you take the two appraisals and get the average of the two. But however, in the portion of Old Delacorte Street fee simple and land value analysis, for a land area of 243, I'm thinking that this is square meters. The indicated value / sales price is $125,000. And if we look at the bill states that we are looking to give plus or minus 316 square meters. Another in comparison is another location of, again, 243 square meters at 110,000. And so I'm just, it's, this is my biggest contention of this bill is that this is government land and essentially land that is owned by the people. And here we are, just by making the comparisons, selling it to, it's almost like insider trading to a specific power family on Guam, and which is $40,000 less than what some of the surrounding areas have been assessed as. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? Senator Esteves, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The previous iteration of this bill, and while I appreciate the work of the sponsor by getting the secondary appraisal, does prove one point. I mean, what we're looking at between the initial appraisal and the new appraisal is about a 30% difference. Again, it doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, but my biggest concern, Madam Speaker, is this is still public land. And while I have issues with selling anything in the public inventory, I have a strong belief that if we were to do it, regardless of adjacent property owner, considering it's public lands, it should go up for a public bid, and there should be an offering made to the public, which would be both beneficial to the public, because then everybody who has an entitlement and the ability to purchase this land should have that opportunity. Furthermore, it would also be a benefit to the government of Guam to ensure that we could potentially get the best price for this, regardless of the appraisal. But again, to stick to the point, it's not common practice for many states and jurisdictions and even the federal government to put up for public auction excess lands or lands they do not need. I believe this is a practice we can initiate, and so with this particular bill, I would have to object to this practice of, regardless of who the family is, but any bill that would provide any type of preference on the sale of public lands without enacting a public process and offering it to the public themselves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Esteves. Speaker Chalahi, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge that this was on the floor previously, but it has since now, the second appraisal is now available to us, and I want to thank the sponsor for that. I just want to point out, similar to the previous speaker, that I too would like to see that if this is just a sale of government land, it's really not a sale that's intended to to remedy any injustice. And I know that there's been many, you know, land deals that the legislature has approved when we've like used somebody's property, so we try to exchange it with some other property and other things like that. Or, you know, we've done something such as ponding that makes a person's private property unusable. We've tried to remedy that. And of course, just, you know, we've taken land for roads, things like that, we've not been able to remedy yet, and so that the legislature's been kind of chipping away at that by various bills. But this is pretty much just a commercial venture. It looks like that we would be selling this property to these landowners, and I would ask also that this be that the Department of Land Management, they're being ordered in this bill or directed in this bill to complete the sale based on these appraisals, and I would ask that they be allowed to negotiate for the highest amount that they could possibly get. And because this is strictly a sale for capital venture. And I would also ask, so I'd like to make an amendment, I think, on, it's just a little confusing because on page 2, line 3, yes, line 3, it says that the Department of Land Management and the owner of the contiguous lot, 1047 new, shall complete the sale. But if you go down to the bottom of this paragraph, or sorry, just a couple sentences down, it says, if the owners of lot 1058 new and 1060-2 new express interest in purchasing a portion contiguous to their lots, said owners shall be given the opportunity to do so. And then there's another portion of the bill that says, no, that's the part of the bill that's missing here, is the part where Department of Land Management had specifically requested that if we are doing this, because they are consolidating these lots, then we should require that consolidation be done within a certain amount of time. Trying to see which part that is. And I guess for me, it's just a little confusing because we're giving the opportunity to one contiguous landowner to purchase it. We're also saying that the other two, if they have an interest, they might purchase also, I guess, the parts that are contiguous to their lots. And but I thought the premise was that because they've all agreed to consolidate all their lots into one new lot for a new venture, and that was my issue with this bill when it came on the floor the last time, is that the Department of Land Management had specifically asked that we include in the bill that language that the lots be consolidated. I'm just trying to find it. To require a consolidation survey map be prepared and approved no later than 90 days from the purchase. And I had asked, so I guess let me just state these separately. So first, I would ask that the bill be amended so that the Department of Land Management, to add the sentence on page 2, a sentence that shall read, the Department of Land Management shall negotiate for the government the highest amount possible, not less than the highest appraisal.
And Vice Speaker, that would be inserted on line 3. Where do you propose to insert?
I think I would like that to happen for all three of these. I guess I'd ask legal to assist, but I'm thinking to put it on line 10 for now, at the end of the paragraph, so that it applies to all three of these transactions, these potential transactions, either the three different owners purchase or the one owner purchases, and that all of them, for all of them, the Department of Land Management is authorized to negotiate for the highest amount, not less than the highest appraisal. Pardon? Oh. No, I'd go forward with that, and if she has, yeah.
On the Terlahi Amendment, would any member wish to be heard? Senator Atta, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The way the law reads is that if we're going to sell land, the sale amount is to be based on two appraisals. And if there's a significant difference between the two appraisals, you take the average of the two. But now what we're saying is, and I don't know if it's because of who owns the surrounding properties, that now we're saying, well, let's squeeze it for as much as we can. So, where's the fairness in that? Now, is that to say then that if the surrounding landowners are, low-income families, that we should sell it for the lowest appraised value? So it works both ways. So the law then allows that you get two appraisals and you average it, and that should be the sell value. So it just seems unfair to do that because of who you are, we're going to have to charge you higher than if you were otherwise. So I would object to that amendment.
Any other member wish to be heard on the Terlahi Amendment? There's been an objection. Speaker, you're recognized to close.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I understand the sentiments of my previous colleague, but I don't believe it's unfair because, fairness, if we look at the big picture, what we're talking about is we've got some government land, maybe boot cart trails, such as in this case, that the government, it may not be that usable because they're in between properties, or that may be usable. We really don't have an analysis of that. We're just saying we're not using it at the moment. We know that GWA, GPA, they're always asking Chamorro Land Trust for land, and I don't know if this is a portion that is actually usable for something, maybe government ponding basin before we have to take care of things like that. I don't know. That's not really been put in front of us. But all I know is that we have people who have been dispossessed of their land, that the government has been trying to remedy that injustice or to compensate them for not compensating them for many, many years. For example, those on Route 4 that we are still waiting for inverse condemnation actions to conclude on all those properties that need to be remedied. We have people who are suing the government of Guam and the ancestral land, or members of ancestral landowners who say that the government of Guam has not compensated them for their property and continues to use their property, or things like that. And so we have so many, to me, injustices that these lands can be used to remedy. And so we're going to use them to remedy an injustice. I'm all for that, and I think we should make it as fair as possible. But I think if we're simply selling land to make it convenient for a commercial enterprise, then we should act in the best interest of the government. And if I was selling my own land, then by all means, I'm going to ask for the maximum amount that I can get. And here, I am asking that we say it's going to be, the law requires that these appraisals are going to be in front of us for a reason, and that's so that we can use our judgment and look at them and determine, should we stick with that amount or not? Is this a good amount or not? And I'm suggesting that in this case, if the Department of Land Management is able to get more than it should, For example, the bill suggests that these owners agree. I don't see that in front of me. So you never know. And I'm just saying the Department of Land Management should have the flexibility in this case, and that it should not go lower than the highest appraisal. That if this land is actually, we can get that kind of money for it, then we should get. And I don't think these amounts are even really reflective of what a private transaction might get for this type of property that, I said it before, this property lies between Route 1, Marine Drive, and the ocean. And it doesn't connect to the ocean, but it allows the front property and to connect to the ocean by going through this boat cart trail. So it's for that reason. It's because this is a different kind of sale that we're doing here. We're selling, and I don't like to think that the government has so much land that we can just go around selling. We're trying to remedy injustices and I would like to, if we're going to use this money for Chamorro Land Trust or for whatever purpose that we think is fair or just and that is necessary, then let's get the maximum amount possible. And I don't even know if the Department of Land Management will be able to negotiate that, but I think we should give them that opportunity, because that's what we would do if it was our private land being sold. And I don't think we should settle for anything less when it comes to the government in this type of a situation. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. We will take a brief recess just to confirm the language and the placement, and we'll come right back. The legislature is back in session. We are considering the Terlahi Amendment, and this would be on page 2, adding a new sentence to line 13 to amend the bill to read, Exhibit A depicts the boundaries of the 316 square meter leftover, irregular remnant portion of the old Delacorte Street to be purchased by the landowner of contiguous lot number 1047 New, Municipality of Hagåtña. And then the new language would be inserted, for sales authorized by this act, the Department of Land Management shall negotiate for the government of Guam the highest amount possible, which shall not be less than the highest appraisal, period. And the Vice Speaker has closed on this amendment, so we'll now call for the question. All those in We'll take a brief 1-minute recess as copies of this amendment will be circulated, and then we'll call for the question. The legislature is back in session. So we had a moment to review the Terlahi amendment to page 2, line 13, adding language, for sales authorized by this act, the Department of Land Management shall negotiate for the government of Guam the highest amount possible, which shall not be less than the highest appraisal. So all of those in favor of this language being added to bill number 297, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The other amendment that I would like to propose is in the Department of Land Management's testimony on the bill dated July 6, where they said that the Department of Land Management requests the additional language be placed into Bill 297 to require a consolidation survey map be prepared and approved no later than 90 days from the purchase of the remnant road. So when lot 1047 or any of the other adjacent lots is able to purchase the road, Department of Land Management wants a new map within 90 days. I think that's reasonable, Madam Speaker, because if you look at Section 5 of the bill on page 2, it says, upon approval and recordation of the consolidation map, the tax roll will be amended. Presumably, the tax for lot 1047, now consolidated with the Bull Cart Trail, should go up. And so the government wants to capture that immediately, and I think 90 days is reasonable to do a consolidation map for those who want to purchase this. So I'm going to read it one more time. It says, a consolidation survey map shall be prepared and approved no later than 90 days from the purchase of the remnant road by the purchaser. That would be my amendment. It would be a new section to the bill. Yes, we'll just add it as a new section. Number 5? Number 5? That's fine. We can add it to the beginning of section 5 of the bill. Pardon? At the end? Or at the end? Yeah, no issue. At the end of section 5? I have no, we'll add it to the end of section 5.
And can you repeat the language as well?
It shall be, a consolidation survey map shall be prepared and approved no later than 90 days from the purchase of the remnant road. Sorry, I'm going to read it again. A consolidation survey map shall be prepared by the purchaser and approved no later than 90 days from the purchase of the remnant road. Maybe that's awkward. I'm sorry. Let me read it one more time. A consolidation survey map shall be prepared and approved no later than 90 days from the purchase of the remnant road.
We'll take a 1-minute recess.
Yes. What do you think? Yeah, no,
The legislature is back in session. Speaker Chalahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe when we recessed, I was on an amendment regarding the consolidation. So if everyone could refer to the page that's passed out, it says line 26, page 2. We're going to add to the end of section 5 of the bill a sentence that reads, as a condition of the sale authorized by this act, the purchaser shall have a consolidation survey map prepared and approved, period. So please just delete all the other words in an effort to save paper. It should be period after approved. So as a condition of the sale authorized by this act, the purchaser shall have a consolidation survey map prepared and approved. This is based on the recommendation of the Department of Land Management.
Thank you. Any member wish to be heard on the Chalahi amendment to page 2, line 26 of the bill, to add at the end of section 5 of the bill to read, as a condition of the sale authorized by this act, the purchaser shall have a consolidation survey map prepared and approved, period. Senator Espadon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, but something was passed out, but it doesn't have that language. So I'm just wondering if I'm looking at the wrong thing or
Yes,
the
so
wrong
she's
thing was passed
asking
out?
if we could just amend the amendment that was passed out also includes prior to the sale of the Remnant Road. So we're going to ask to just strike those last few words. So it's begins with as a condition and the ends with prepared and approved, period. Do you have that version?
No, ma'am.
I had said earlier, if Madam Chair, if you don't mind, point of order, I had asked earlier, the one that's been passed out, I'm asking you to just strike through the words after the word approved, period, and strike them through. And we didn't recopy it. Just to save.
Madam Speaker, what I have, let me read what I have. As a
No.
condition of sale, comma, adjacent landowners shall consent to elimination of any existing easement
That's
that
a
may be
different,
limited by
that's
the
a different
proposed sale.
amendment. There should be.
Well, then I don't have the amendment that's being spoken to.
Thank you. We'll take a recess. The legislature is back in session. And we are on the Terlahi Amendment to page 2, line 26, to add at the end of section 5 of the bill to read, as a condition of the sale authorized by this act, the purchaser shall have a consolidation survey map prepared and approved, period. Any member wish to be heard on this amendment? Any objections to the Terlahi Amendment? Senator San Agustin, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, you're asking that the person that wants to buy the property has to create a consolidated survey map and spend out of his pocket?
Yes.
Not the government that already has the maps? That can do it already? I mean,
So that the purchaser shall have the survey map prepared and approved. So it's my understanding that the purchaser will pay for the consolidation survey map to be prepared and go through the approval process.
I just don't see it making sense. The government controls the land. It's land management, and they'll get rid of revenue and tax. They'll take a picture, they'll draw up the map, and they'll say, here's the land. It's the government selling. It's not like you or I going to buy it from a private company, okay? Thank you.
Is that a question for the mover of the amendment?
No, I'm not in support of that. Asking a private company, a private individual, go and draw up the map and then go buy the government land. Government should prepare all their documents. That's how every real estate agent sells. They bring us the map. Then they offer us what we want to buy.
Thank you, Senator. Any other member wish to be heard on the Terlahi Amendment? Any objection? There's been an objection.
To close, Madam Chair. If I
Any other member wish to be heard? Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate a couple of things. One is, this is a recommendation by the Department of Land Management requiring the purchaser of government land who wants to consolidate this government land with its own is a benefit to this purchaser. It's not necessarily a benefit to the government, except for, if we think it's a good deal. So in exchange for allowing them to purchase this property, we are requiring, as we require all people who purchase properties, to do the maps that consolidate two lots together. And I think it's absolutely reasonable, it's rational, and it's absolutely fair to require the purchaser of the property to be the one to bear the cost and to make sure that the map that they do is approvable. And that's really the core, I think, that the land management is getting at, that we want their map to be something that land management can approve and will approve. And I think that's absolutely a reasonable requirement for this transaction. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. On the amendment, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My third amendment, or I don't know how many, but this is my final amendment, is this amendment. It says to lines 3 to 10 on page 2. Right now, the language reads that should the entirety of the old Delacorte Street in municipality of Oregania be purchased solely by the owner of lot 1047 new, said owner shall not cause a situation that would landlock the contiguous lots. Now, this is a finding of the Department of Land Management that this sale would landlock those other lots. And of course, normally we don't allow transactions that would landlock any other property. I am just asking that we reword this so that we give the Department of Land Management kind of the upper hand here to determine whether this is the case or not. And instead of saying the owner shall not cause a situation that would landlock the contiguous lots, I'm proposing that we write the Department of Land Management shall not proceed with the sale if the contiguous lots shall be landlocked. And I think that is their duty in any event to ensure that landlocked lands are non-conforming and that we don't have that kind of situation going on. So it's really just a rewording here, but I think it gives the land management the authority that they're supposed to have in this type of situation. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And has this amendment been circulated? On the Terlahi amendments to page 2, lines 3 to 10, to amend the bill to remove the words, said owner shall not cause a situation that would landlock the contiguous lots, and instead include language, the Department of Land Management shall not proceed with the sale if the contiguous lots shall be landlocked, period. On the Terlahi amendment, any senator wish to be heard? Any objection to this Terlahi amendment? There's been an objection. Senator St. Nicholas, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I think we need to be clear with what the amendment will do. If you reference the aerial map that highlights the section that we're talking about in red, the sale will assuredly landlock the contiguous lots. We would be effectively just killing the bill. It's a poison pill that would kill the bill. The original language that's being stricken through is an attempt to move forward the transaction in a way that's going to prevent a landlock. The section that's being stricken reads, said owner shall not cause a situation that would landlock the contiguous lots. Again, for the record, Madam Speaker, the contiguous lots are all owned by the same family. Putting a provision in here that restricts the Department of Land Management from selling it if the contiguous lots are landlocked, knowing full well that by looking at this picture, you will effectively landlock it if you do sell it, you're killing the bill, and you're preventing the transaction from going through. And so I don't, I object to this amendment because I find it to be disingenuous for the intent of having to allow for there to be access, because it really is just an attempt to just kill the transaction. I believe that the existing language that's being stricken through is satisfactory to mandate that the owner ensures that there's access. If, for whatever reason, the surrounding property owners, who are all of the same family, all of a sudden find themselves being prohibited from accessing their properties, they can go to any court and cite this particular sentence and say, regardless of the fact that so-and-so, my relative, owns this particular strip after purchasing it, he must give me access because that was a condition of the sale. And so they'd be able to get judicial remedy. So I don't think that this language is necessary. I find this language to actually be a poison pill to kill the transaction, and I don't support that. I mean, if you don't support the bill, articulate your reasons why and vote no. But if we're going to try and put language in that's going to achieve that objective in a roundabout way, I just don't do business like that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Any other senator wish to be heard on the Terlahi amendment? There's been an objection. Any other member wish to be heard? Vice Speaker, you're invited to close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I object to being called disingenuous because I am trying to protect the government's interests in a transaction where the rest, for some reason, we're trying to make it extremely easy. Easier than it is for any other person who's going to do this type of transaction among private parties. And I don't understand that. Like I said earlier, there is no injustice that we are trying to remedy here that causes the government to fall all over itself to do a big favor. This is a commercial transaction, and I think if we are trying to say the said owner, I don't want to fool the public. We're saying the owner, the new owner of the government land shall not cause a situation that would landlock the contiguous lots. Well, that's completely unenforceable. So if somebody wants to call me disingenuous, I think they should re-examine themselves, because this language is completely not enforceable. It says the owner shall do this. When will they do this? After they've bought the property and there's nothing the government can do about it? I think if we are trying to be clear here, and to be honest with you, I don't care who the owners are, and I don't care who the adjacent owners are. If they're all family, great. But if they're not, and I have done many, many land transactions during my 30-year career as a lawyer, and family does not always get along. So they may get along today, and tomorrow may be a completely different situation. So I don't understand why that is relevant here. If they have an agreement that they're going to put into writing, then that should take care of the issue. If they're not, and we're really, relying on assumptions, I just think that that's not our role here as the government. What we're trying to do is protect the government's interest. I think that's what we should be doing here, not falling all over ourselves to make this transaction easy for anyone. And I think it's already easy. At this point, the body's rejected my amendment to say that we should get the highest of the appraisals. And instead, we're going to get the middle of 2 appraisals, which are really very low. I think the highest one was only $90,000. And we don't make it a condition of the sale that the owners are going to bear the cost of a consolidation map. And if somebody wants the government to bear this cost for the benefit of private landowners, I can't understand that at all. But this amendment is really simple. It just says, are you going to give the Department of Land Management, who right now insists that all land is not landlocked? Otherwise, they don't allow that type of property, depiction. So right now, the lands are not landlocked. And if the government, by selling this to one owner, is going to create landlocked, I just think it should cover its own interests here. And that's why I'm saying we should make it a requirement of the Department of Land Management. Now, these property owners, they can do things to take care of this. And like I said, they can make an agreement amongst themselves, as some people seem to be very sure that they will do that. Well, then this makes sure of that. And it gives the Department of Land Management the role that it should have in making sure when it is selling land for the government to private landowners, that it should be the one that has the authority to ensure that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. On the Terlahi amendment to page 2, lines 3 to 10.
Just a point of information, Madam Speaker. The retiring speaker mentioned that the lands are not currently landlocked, and that is inaccurate. They are currently landlocked. This lot is in the middle of privately owned property, to include the road access. This particular strip does not provide access to the public right-of-way. That is already being provided by one of the adjacent landowners. So the lands are landlocked. Selling this piece of property wouldn't make them, not selling this property would not make them less landlocked. They already are entirely landlocked. What the amendment would do is it would basically prohibit the sale of this landlocked strip. And that's ultimately what would happen if the amendment passes.
Thank you, Senator. We'll proceed on the Terlahi amendment to page 2, lines 3 to 10. All of those in favor of the Terlahi amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I've been pretty clear as to my very, very particular objections to this bill. I just think we have a lot of uses for government land. We have a lot of people who are still waiting after years and years for government land, for exchange of land, because we've taken their property or we're using it for ponding basin or for other reasons that the government has prohibited them from use of their property. They're still waiting to get some justice. And I just think we need to be very judicious with our use of government land. And if it's not to resolve these injustices, then what is it for? And if we're selling it to get money, then we should get the most money that we possibly can and use the money to solve the injustices that have been laying out there for years and years and years. It's just a peculiar situation I find ourselves in, or I find the legislature in, that we want to do business owners favors of selling them government land and yet not protect the government's interests when we do that, and not protect the public interests when we require all landowners to meet certain conditions. We should especially do that when we are allowing them to purchase government property. It shouldn't be the reverse, that when we allow them to purchase government property, we're going to allow them to slack off on all the other rules. I think that's backwards, and we should be more strict in this situation. So, if we were going to sell it, I would ask that we at least get what the second appraiser says it's worth, and not less than that. I think that's unfair for all of those people who've been waiting years and years for some kind of justice on their land. And I think it's unfair to allow purchase, to landlock, or do anything else that the Department of Land Management has already put on the record that we have an opportunity to take care of right now, today, very simply. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. Senator San Nicolas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't going to speak on this bill, but it's just been characterized in such a fashion that I feel it begets the necessity for me to clarify. First of all, Madam Speaker, it's been stated that we have many uses of government land, and that is perhaps true. But I'd like to be very transparent about what land we're talking about right now. We're talking about 316 square meters. Now, Madam Speaker, a quarter acre is 1,000 square meters. A house lot is half of a quarter acre, that's 500 square meters. This piece of property isn't even suitable for a dwelling. If you actually go and drive and look at where this piece of property is, just so that the public knows what we're talking about, if you go behind that building where the, I believe it's the Fisher Law Firm is at, that little strip of pavement behind that building, that's what we're talking about here. There's no way that little strip of land is going to be used to remedy any injustice. I can't imagine giving that to Tamaria or Tun Jose and saying, here, we're making you whole by giving you that. It's useless. But here's what the problem is right now that we're trying to fix with this bill. It's not going to remedy any injustice, but it is creating a situation where the surrounding properties are not able to consolidate and fix themselves up, because the government is literally smack dab in the middle of it all, and it's in the way. No one's going to want to buy that strip of pavement, Madam Speaker, because you can't do anything with it. Unless the objective is to try and create some kind of bidding war in order for rivals to try and keep each other from being able to fix up their land. I don't get myself involved in any of that nonsense. What does bother me is we have a strip of government-owned land, and this isn't just the only piece, Madam Speaker. There's chunks of government property all over the place that are smack dab in the middle of properties that are privately owned, and you can't do anything because that particular chunk of land is carved out. If we move forward with this transaction, we allow for the adjacent properties to increase in value. And while that's good for the private landowners, it's also good for the government, because we base our property taxes on valuations. Government getting in the way like this and depressing property values is really government getting in the way of collecting money for the Territorial Educational Facilities Fund that receives these property taxes. And by association, it's government getting in the way of getting tax dollars into our public education system that receives these property taxes. Which, one step further, is government getting in the way of getting money into our own classrooms. And for what? To try and characterize that this is somehow a gift of some sort to a private in a private transaction. No one else is going to buy this property, Madam Speaker. Now, the reason why we have two appraisals is because that's what the law says. And the reason why we take the average of the two appraisals is because that's what's fair. You sell it to them at the low price, then you know someone can say you're giving it away. And you sell it to them at the high price, and you can say, well, you know, maybe somebody got a higher appraisal because the appraiser just didn't like them or whatever, I don't know. But by getting the middle, you're just trying to find justice. And the owners of these lots, Madam Speaker, I mean, it was mentioned earlier in the session, there aren't a lot of fond press releases issued with my name on them with respect to the owners of these lots. But justice is justice. And what's fair is fair. And this chunk of property in the middle of those lots is depressing property values, is preventing us from being able to realize the full taxes that we can. And it's also holding back the improvement of that area. I drive by there all the time, you know. That intersection over there in Aganya, just across from the old auto spot. Those lots, those properties, if they can be improved and made nicer, it'll be good for our economy. It's kind of an eyesore right now. I really would like for it to, you know, be improved. But the reason why they can't is because of this. And they won't be able to improve it because of this. Now, we brought this up in the last session. It already made sense at the time, but then some members wanted the second appraisal. We got it. Now there's other new hurdles. I fully support getting the most use out of government land for government purposes, public purposes, when there's actually a use to be gotten. Truth of the matter is that DPW should be going in there and scrubbing that pavement and maintaining that and keeping it clean because it's government property. But the landowners do it. I believe in getting remedy for all of our people who have land takings unjustly and etc. But that's not going to remedy anybody. And so as we seek to find justice for those affected parties, let's not do so by creating injustices for these parties. If we aren't willing to be fair and equitable when the opportunity comes for us to be so, then it's just going to be a constant tit for tat. I would prefer that we evaluate this for what it is. It's a piece of property that isn't even the size of a house lot in an area that the government has not maintained, that is getting in the way of multiple adjacent related family landowners being able to actually do something with the area, that's holding back property values that, if allowed to appreciate, would increase our property tax revenues. And who knows, whatever gets improved down there, it might create jobs, it might improve tourism, so many benefits for the community, the public, the working people, maybe more tax revenue. Or we can put our foot down and say, no under any circumstances, or no under a variety of circumstances that are going to constantly change, because we really just want to say no. If we want to say no, then let's just say no. Or let's get it done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Nicolas. On the main motion, on bill number 297, any member wish to be heard? If not, I will invite Senator Ada to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think the preceding speaker has pretty much said it all, but I would like to address a couple of points that were made. One is that it was suggested that we should put the land, this piece of property, on a public bid. And, you know, if this property was a large, developable piece of property, then I agree, we should do that. But the way the law actually reads right now is that in the case of these remnant lots, and if it's a budding and adjacent lot, that then those adjacent landowners should be given the option to buy the property and equitably. So if, you know, the landowner on one side of the road wants to buy it and the other guy at the other side, then they each can purchase up to half of it and extend their lots by that much. So I think just to put that idea to rest, we're talking about a piece of irregular shaped property that you cannot develop. And really the utility of it is just for pretty much the adjoining landowners. The second thing is that the comment was made that we're selling this land for the convenience of surrounding landowners only. And I would have to disagree with that comment because I think we have to recognize that really we can't, the government's not going to be able to develop on that land, but by selling it, it's going to be able to generate revenue to then go and survey Chamorro Land Trust properties that would then make properties available to those who are eligible for Chamorro Land Trust properties. So it is not for the convenience of the surrounding landowners. I'm saying we should sell it so that we can provide something to our people, be able to lease the properties and be able eventually to put in infrastructure. So, Madam Speaker, you know, I just wanted to address that, and I appreciate the input that has been provided by everyone, and I just ask my colleagues to support it because it will provide revenue for the Chamorro Land Trust. I just wish I could put language in there that says once the money goes into the Chamorro Land Trust Survey and Infrastructure Fund, nobody can hijack it like it's been hijacked in the past. I don't know, but if you can find language tight enough to do that, but you know, all we can do is hope for the best. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I move to place Bill 297 down in the voting file.
On the motion to place Bill 297 to the voting file, is there any objection? There's an objection, so on the motion, there's no objection. On the motion, no objection, motion carries. Yeah, what's his bill number? 292. All right, if there's no objection to going back to Bill 292, Senator Rodriguez, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 292-34 as introduced on the third reading and be allowed to briefly discuss the bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 292 is relative to allowing the use of video teleconferencing applications at meetings of government boards and commissions to guarantee quorum, for convenience, and to expand eligibility of membership to those community members that may be homebound, and relative to the use of video live streaming at meetings in order to increase transparency in government. Madam Speaker, a great deal of government inefficiency is due to the lack of quorum at several, if not all, board and commission meetings. Without a quorum, actions are delayed and pushed back to the next meeting. Meetings are many times conducted monthly, thus these delays cause for a very inefficient methodology. In addition to the concerns about having enough members present to move actions forward, the requirement for physical presence at meetings exclude a great many in our community from participating in the government service. Oftentimes, lack of transportation, physical disability, caretaking responsibilities, and other personal life concerns prevent members from attending board and commission meetings. In our present-day technology affords an answer. The rapid advance in teleconferencing applications and the improvements in internet access and speed now allow for the use of these applications in our government. Applications such as FaceTime, Zoom, GoToMeeting, and Skype are used extensively in the private sector and used for personal convenience. These applications are now capable of more than just seeing someone's face on a telephone call. These applications now have options to record proceedings, project slides and video to the group, screen sharing, and automatically generate transcripts. One great advantage is these applications are free or at a minimal monthly fee, currently around $15 per month, and can be used across various platforms. Using these applications will allow members to participate from home, when traveling, and even while parked along the road using their phones. The use of video live streaming currently used in legislative proceedings is an effective way of engaging with the community and increases transparency of government operations. The time is right to take further advantage of this technology to reduce government inefficiency and to allow greater access to our people to participate in the government service. And so, Madam Speaker, what this bill does is establishes the necessary statutory authority for boards and commissions to be able to use video teleconferencing and to live stream their boards and commission meetings. Some of the complaints we receive from our people is that when they have some pending application or some government business that is pending at a government agency that has a board or commission, a lot of times we hear that the lack of quorum, results in the meetings being postponed and rescheduled to another date. And this causes a lot of hardship for a lot of our people. And so what this does is that it provides that authority for boards and commissions to be able to set up the rules and regulations on how to conduct these types of meetings using teleconferencing technology. And so although this does not mandate it, Madam Speaker, this sets the authority for these boards and commissions to be able to do it. And hopefully, we see that it becomes a policy that all boards and commissions use this technology of video teleconferencing and also live streaming their boards and commission meetings as a regular course of business moving forward. And so I ask my colleagues for their support on this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill 292, is there any senator who would like to speak? Bill 292? No?
Madam Speaker, can I just have a quick recess? I have an amendment I'd like to proffer.
1 minute recess.
The legislature is back in session. Vice Speaker Chirlahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Arising, just a couple points on this bill. It sounds great that we are going to use teleconferencing because this technology is very convenient, and it would allow those who have a hard time getting to the meetings to be present and, of course, allow quorum, like the sponsor said. My concern is that the original, all these open government laws, the real intent of it is for the boards and commissions that are making decisions, that are acting, to face the public, to see those people who are objecting to their actions and face them when they vote. And to see, even, the nonverbal language that will be in front of them. It's also to see each other and all the evidence, of course, that's in front of them. And I'm just a little concerned that this evidence, will be, there may be different ways that it might be displayed with teleconferencing. The other thing is that teleconferencing right now, I think we've seen this in some of the agencies. Some of them have some very nice technology to do this. I've seen it in the Congresswoman's office and some others, but just because they are different, I think they should be a little uniform so that they require the same things. And the bill currently allows for every board and commission to develop this policy procedures on the use of teleconferencing for its members. But I would like to suggest that we amend this bill on page 3, lines 11 and 22, and that we substitute the words boards and commissions to the Attorney General, who's currently in charge of enforcing the open government law, and so that the Attorney General, its office, establish this policy, procedures, and education on the use of video conferencing for, and then take out the words their members, and for boards and commissions. So that this is a uniform policy. It's pretty much a uniform open government law extension that they would be creating that would then, guide these boards and commission members in the use of technology. And I think that would also, take away the requirement for us to define teleconferencing at this point, and that would allow for changing technology. So I'm hoping that changing it to the Attorney General, allowing her to do that by, the AAA, that it would allow the public input, it would allow them to take care of all the concerns that really are the basis of the open government law. And it would make it uniform throughout the government. And I think we just have to be very, very careful so as not to remove people who are going to be voting on something that impacts, others, that they be relieved of seeing that firsthand. I think that's very, very important, and that they see each other. It's difficult. I think, we would all like to do this from the comfort of our homes, but I just think there's a reason behind us having to be uncomfortable, having to, face everyone while we're doing these things. So I agree with the intent that we want quorums, we want to make it easier for them, yet I think we have to ensure that we protect the public, we protect their ability to see people who are acting on their behalf. That's the reason why we open this all up and we allow them access to our session hall. We want them to be able to see us firsthand directly. And just, this is just an example, when we face a camera on one person, for example, the public cannot see the rest of the session hall and what's going on in here. And I just think this is one of the underlying principles of the open government law, is just that they should be able to see even the body language of those that are going to act on their behalf. So if I would ask that's my amendment, Madam Speaker, lines 11, line 22, to change the word boards and commissions to Attorney General, and take out the words their members to boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. And again, this is amending sections 2 and 3 of the bill. Section 2C, changing the word boards and commissions to the Attorney General. Shall develop policy, procedures, and education on the use of video teleconferencing for striking their members and adding boards and commissions. Any member wish to be heard? Any member wish to be heard? Senator Espaldon, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I guess right now is that, one of the problems I think that I've always had with the way we do things here within the legislature when we make amendments is that we throw out a concept, and then if we don't speak to it within the next 30 seconds to a minute, then the amendment passes, and we don't really get to perhaps internalize really the pros and cons or the possible negative ramifications of inserting amendments into these bills. In this case, we're now inserting the Attorney General to develop these rules, and I'm just trying to figure out down the road whether the Attorney General may have to recuse himself from any potential proceedings that may be brought against the boards and commissions, because it was the Attorney General's office who actually wrote the rules. And so I hesitate right now to say I'm for this amendment or against it without contemplating and maybe even checking with the Attorney General whether that is in fact the case, that if they are the ones who are going to write these rules on behalf of the boards and commissions, and there is a suit filed against the board or commission, where the Attorney General would then not be allowed to represent that board or commission. And I state that as problematic at this point to speak to the issue because I don't know. Perhaps we could leave this this issue tomorrow, and it gives us a chance to at least make contact with the Attorney General's office to see if that would be a proper way. I mean, if it would be proper to mandate that the Attorney General is the one who's going to be responsible to write the rules and regs, and then again speak to the issue of whether or not that if there is any kind of complaint against the board or the commissions, right, because of these rules that were written, whether that means that the board and commission is no longer has the access to representation by the Attorney General's office. So at this point, without speaking to this in favor or against this, perhaps we can recess until tomorrow morning, but in the meantime, we, between now and 5 o'clock, try to make contact with the Attorney General's office to understand their position on this. So I move to recess until tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Senator Espaldon. On the motion to recess.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have no objection to the recess, but if I may, perhaps as we all, seek some guidance from the Attorney General's office or from others, I understand what the mover of the amendment is trying to say in getting the Attorney General's office involved. I understand Senator Espaldon's position as well. Perhaps as we go out and seek some guidance, we should be looking at the Office of Technology to be somewhat involved in putting together the rules and regs. But the boards and commissions, they have to be at the forefront of putting the rules together, because not every board is the same. Not every commission is the same. There's different missions. And so perhaps a compromise would be, and we can consider this tomorrow if we do recess now, is that the boards and commissions in coordination or collaboration with OTEC and the Attorney General's office come up, with the rules and regs. I just think we can't not have the boards and commission part of developing the rules and regs.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. There's been a motion to recess until 9 o'clock. So The legislature is now in recess.